So as part of my transition to a low-carb diet, I also started paying a lot of attention to supplementation and where there were deficiencies potentially in my diet. And I came to the conclusion that living in Central Virginia, in looking at my phone and looking at the UV index, most of the year I just can't get any sunlight. And the part of the year where I can get a little bit of sunlight, usually I'm covered up. So I've figured out that I'm really only getting enough vitamin D in June, July, and August. And the remaining 9 months out of the year, I'm most likely deficient. So I decided that I would start taking a vitamin D3 supplement. Now, I was a little worried at first because the daily recommended value is like 600 international units. And this alone is 2,000. So I started low at 2,000. And over the course of 2 months, I've now worked my way up to this, which is just the K2 and D3 combined, 5,000 international units of D3 and 90, micrograms? Yeah, 90 micrograms of vitamin K, MK7. Now, I will say that none of these things work in isolation. I found out from my research that I need magnesium, I need K2 with the D3, and I also need calcium, which I make my own out of eggshells as calcium carbonate. I put it in some citric acid, some lemon juice, and it becomes calcium citrate, which is much more absorbable. And I think each of these things play a role. The magnesium is part of the transport structure for the calcium. The D3 is kind of like a vacuum cleaner. It sucks the calcium out of your diet and puts it into your bloodstream. And then the K2 is kind of a traffic cop. It takes the calcium out of your bloodstream and directs it into your bones and teeth. So you kind of need all these things working together to make sure that the calcium is getting in the right place instead of just sticking in and hardening up your arteries. But amazing some of the things I found about vitamin D3, and I learned some interesting things about D3. It's kind of like a master key. It unlocks and regulates more than 2,000 genes in the human body. It's actually a hormone. It's not, I don't know why they call it a vitamin. Originally they thought it was a vitamin. It's actually a hormone. It's so important that your body naturally produces large quantities of it. It helps your macrophages identify and kill pathogens, and it also prevents the immune system from overreacting, which they're doing studies on to where it does sometimes help people with autoimmune disorders. It's also very important in the brain. It is a cofactor for tryptophan that turns tryptophan into serotonin in the brain. So it's very important for mood regulation, which is important to me because I'm bipolar. And I started noticing there's like a seasonal issue. During the winter, I would feel a lot more depressed. And I think a lot of that had to do with a vitamin D deficiency. And I've noticed a vastly more stable, balanced mood in conjunction with other therapies. But I think the vitamin D3 definitely has a role. I think being deficient has a role for me, especially during the winter. I also had a few injuries last year. I broke my 5th metatarsal, a very small fracture, basically healed on its own. And I had a couple fractures in my big toes. And what I started to notice is they healed very well going into the fall. And then winter came and I started having these aches and pains in those toes where those fractures were previously. And I'm like, something isn't right here. And I'm starting to think back and I'm like, oh wait, I probably have a deficiency of vitamin D in the winter. So those microfractures kind of can't heal all the way or they open up a little bit again. And so, ever since I started taking this, I've noticed those microfractures have hardened in my personal case. And just as an additional aside, I also take these in my morning meal. Since I'm doing a low-carb diet, these kind of things are best absorbed in a fatty meal to get the most benefit. So I'm very okay with where I'm at 5,000 international units, upping myself to that over the course of 2 months. During the winter, I may even consider increasing the dosage even further. So that's my personal experience. I don't know where these daily recommendations came from, but in my personal case, they certainly don't apply. I need a much higher dose of vitamin D throughout the year, especially the winter months, to stay mentally and physically healthy.